Rylan had always liked the silence. The forest surrounding his cabin stretched for miles, dense and green, with sunlight streaming through the tall trees in golden shafts. Birds called to one another, squirrels darted along branches, and the wind whispered through the leaves like a gentle lullaby. For years, he had lived alone in this place, cutting timber, repairing his cabin, and surviving off what the forest gave him. The isolation was comforting. No one to bother him. No rules except the ones he set for himself. He woke early every day. The first light of dawn found him at the edge of the forest, axe in hand, surveying the trees he would fell that day. The work was hard, but he liked it. Each swing of the axe was a rhythm, each log a small victory. Still, even as he worked, he noticed the way the forest seemed to watch him back. The birds were quieter than usual, and the wind carried an unusual heaviness. Something was different this morning. It was mid-morning when he first saw her. She appeared on the narrow path that led to his cabin, carrying nothing but a small bundle wrapped in a faded cloth. At first, he thought she might be lost, one of the rare travelers who occasionally wandered into this remote area. But as he stepped closer, he realized she was young, perhaps no older than 20, and her face was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes were ragged, and she moved slowly, as if every step was an effort. Rylan instinctively raised his axe, not out of aggression, but caution. "Who are you?" he called. His voice carried over the clearing, steady and calm. The girl froze and looked up at him, her large eyes wide with fear. She said nothing at first, just held the bundle closer to her chest. Finally, in a small, trembling voice, she said, "Please, I need shelter." Rylan studied her for a moment. He could see she was pregnant, her rounded belly evident even through the loose clothing. Something about her was strange, not dangerous, exactly, but there was a weight in her expression, a kind of quiet desperation that tugged at his chest. He had lived alone for years, but he wasn't cruel. "Come inside," he said, lowering the axe. "But stay near the door until I know you're not a threat." She nodded quickly, relief washing over her face, and followed him to the cabin. It was small, made of timber he had cut and assembled himself, with a stone fireplace and a few shelves holding the few things he owned. There was a table, a couple of chairs, and a bed he had made himself from pine boards and a thick mattress of woven wool. It wasn't much, but it was safe and warm. Once inside, he motioned for her to sit. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle but firm. "Ilara," she whispered. "And your brother?" She flinched at the word, then looked down at her bundle. He sent me here. He said you could keep me safe. I don't know why he did it," she said, her voice breaking. "He said it was for my own good." Rylan frowned, sensing there was more to the story than she was telling. But he didn't press. Some truths revealed themselves in time. For now, he fetched a bowl of water and a small loaf of bread he had baked earlier, setting them on the table. "Eat," he said simply. "You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days." She hesitated, then slowly reached for the bread, nibbling at it as if afraid it might vanish. Rylan watched her, noting how careful she was, how her hands trembled slightly. Her eyes were sharp, though, even as she ate observant, noticing every detail of the cabin, the way the sunlight fell on the floor, the smell of pine and smoke. "You can stay here," he said after a while. "But you need to understand, I don't have much. You'll have to help around the cabin. And you follow my rules." Ilara looked at him, surprise flickering across her face. "Rules?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, his tone firm. "You respect this place. You respect me. And you survive." He paused, then added, "Do that, and you're welcome here." She nodded, relief and gratitude mingling in her expression. For the first time in days, she allowed herself a small smile. Over the next few hours, Rylan showed her the basics: how to draw water from the nearby stream, how to gather firewood safely, how to tend to the small garden he had cultivated at the edge of the clearing. She was quick to learn, surprisingly strong for someone so pregnant, and her curiosity was insatiable. She asked questions about the forest, the animals, the stars that glimmered faintly above the canopy at night. Rylan found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years. He told her about his life before the forest, about the colony he had left behind, about the work he did and the peace he found in solitude. Elara listened quietly, nodding occasionally, but there was a shadow in her eyes, a hesitation that he could not place. As night fell, Rylan built a fire outside the cabin. They sat together, watching the flames flicker, listening to the sounds of the forest. The wind had picked up again, carrying with it the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional distant howl of an animal. Elara shivered, and Rylan moved to place a blanket around her shoulders. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly. "Nothing here will hurt you if you follow the rules." She looked at him, her eyes wide. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I don't know why he sent me. I only know I can't go back." Rylan nodded slowly. He understood more than she realized. Families could be cruel in their own ways, driven by fear or desperation. But the forest was honest. It demanded nothing but respect and patience, and in return, it gave life. For the first time, he saw the possibility that his quiet life might change, perhaps not in the ways he expected, but change nonetheless. And for reasons he could not yet understand. He felt that Elara's arrival was not just coincidence. Something larger was at work, something that the forest itself seemed to acknowledge. That night, he kept watch outside the cabin, axe by his side, senses alert. The moon rose high, casting silver light across the clearing. He saw shadows move between the trees, not threatening, but deliberate. Birds called softly, and the wind carried whispers he could almost understand. Elara slept peacefully inside. And for a moment, Rylan allowed himself to hope that perhaps they could survive this together. By the first light of dawn, Rylan had made a quiet decision. He would protect her, no matter what, and he would do so using his skills, his knowledge of the forest, and the ingenuity that had kept him alive for so many years. Somehow, he knew that Elara's presence would change everything, and that together, they might uncover something far greater than either of them could imagine. As the sun broke through the trees, warming the cabin and the clearing, Rylan felt a strange sense of purpose stir within him. The forest had been his home, his sanctuary. But now it would be something more. It would be a place of new beginnings, of courage and survival, of trust and discovery. And he knew, deep down, that the arrival of this young, fragile, yet resilient girl marked the first chapter of a story he had never imagined, one that would test the limits of human strength, compassion, and ingenuity. The forest watched silently as they prepared for the days ahead. And Rylan understood that in this vast, wild place, anything was possible if they dared to survive. The morning sun broke through the trees, spilling light across the forest floor and waking the birds in a chorus of chirps. Rylan had been up for hours, stacking firewood near the cabin. But his mind was not on work. His thoughts kept returning to Elara. She had slept through the night peacefully. Yet something about her felt unusual. He couldn't explain it, but he had learned long ago to trust his instincts. Elara emerged from the cabin just as he was finishing, her steps slow but steady. She carried a small bundle of herbs she had gathered from the forest, carefully chosen for their scent and supposed medicinal properties. Rylan watched her, noticing how precise her movements were, how she seemed to understand the forest in a way that went beyond casual observation. "Good morning," Rylan said, trying to keep his tone light. She nodded, smiling faintly. "Morning," she replied. "I thought these might help with your cuts and scrapes. You work hard with those big logs." Rylan took the herbs and inhaled their sharp, fresh smell. "Thanks," he said. "I'll put them near the fireplace." But, he hesitated, 40. You seem to know a lot about these plants. Most people here would just pick what looks edible. You have a method. Alara's eyes flickered with a mixture of pride and caution. I learned from someone, long ago, she said softly. It's not something I just figured out. The forest has rules, and if you know them, it can help you. Rylan studied her closely. Her words seemed innocent, but her manner carried a confidence that was unusual for someone her age, especially someone in her condition. He decided to test his instincts further. Tell me something, he said, lowering his voice. Do you know about the northern ridge? The one near the old rock formation? She nodded immediately. Yes. There are plants there that aren't anywhere else in the forest. Some can heal cuts. Some can help with fever. And the soil, it changes the way they grow. Rylan felt a shiver run down his spine. He had explored that ridge many times and had never noticed such subtleties. Her knowledge went beyond the ordinary. Over the next few days, Rylan and Alara worked side by side. He taught her how to chop wood safely, how to tend the fire, how to trap small game if needed. She listened intently, her hands learning the rhythm of work quickly. In return, she showed him how to make poultices from plants, how to identify subtle changes in the soil, and even how to detect tiny shifts in the weather by observing the movement of the leaves and clouds. It was as if she had a natural connection with the forest, one that went beyond instinct. Rylan had spent decades surviving here, yet she seemed to understand the place on a level even he hadn't reached. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and purple, she approached him hesitantly. Rylan, there's something I need to tell you, she said. Her voice trembled slightly, but there was determination in her eyes. Rylan set down his axe. Go on, he said, his tone calm but curious. I wasn't sent here by chance, she admitted. I was part of a program, a research program. It was meant to help humans survive in extreme environments. They trained me to understand the land, the plants, even the weather, so that I could help people settle new worlds safely. Rylan blinked, trying to absorb her words. He had heard rumors of experimental programs in distant colonies, but he had never imagined one would reach here, to this remote forest. And your brother? He asked. She flinched at the mention of him. He thought this was the only way to save me. I don't even know if he believed it would work. I only know that he sent me here and I had no choice but to come. Rylan nodded slowly. I see. That explains a lot, he said. But why didn't you say anything before? I didn't want to scare you, she admitted. And I didn't know if I could trust you. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet there was an underlying strength in it. Rylan studied her for a long moment. She was different, yes, but he could see her humanity. She was not dangerous. If anything, she seemed fragile in some ways, strong in others. All right, he said finally. We'll keep it simple. You stay here. You survive. And we trust each other. Agreed? Alara nodded, relief evident on her face. Agreed. As the days passed, Rylan began to notice more of her peculiar skills. She could mimic the calls of birds perfectly, luring them closer for observation. She could sense changes in the wind before a storm arrived, and when she tended to the small plants he grew, they seemed to flourish faster than usual. At first, he thought it was luck, but it became impossible to ignore. One morning, while he chopped wood near the stream, he heard a soft voice calling to him. Rylan, come look! He dropped the axe and ran toward the sound. Alara was kneeling by the stream, holding a small plant with delicate, silver-tinged leaves. I've never seen this before, she said, her eyes wide. It's special. It shouldn't be here. Rylan leaned closer, examining the plant. Its leaves shimmered slightly, reflecting the sunlight in unusual patterns. He had spent years studying this forest and had never seen anything like it. Where did you find it? He asked. Just downstream, she said. It's growing near the rocks. I think the forest brought it here. Or maybe it's trying to tell us something. Rylan frowned. The forest doesn't talk, he said. But he didn't sound convincing even to himself. There was something about Alara's presence that made the forest feel different, alive in a way he hadn't noticed before. Over the next few days, they experimented carefully with the plant. Alara explained how it could be used to make a tea that eased fatigue and strengthened the immune system. Rylan watched in awe as she worked, her hands gentle yet precise. It was as if she had a bond with the world around her that he could only admire. Despite her knowledge, she remained humble. She never boasted or acted superior. Instead, she asked questions, learned from him, and shared what she knew only when necessary. Rylan respected her for that, and slowly, a bond formed between them, not just of trust, but of companionship. One evening, as they sat near the fire, Rylan broke the silence. Alara, you're different from anyone I've ever met. I don't know if it's your training or something else, but you have a way of seeing the world that makes sense. Even to me. Alara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the flames. I don't know if I understand it myself, she said softly, but I feel connected to this place, to the life around me. And now, maybe, to you. Rylan felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had been alone for so long, and yet here was someone who seemed to understand him. Even without words, he realized that survival was not just about food, water, and shelter. It was about connection, about trust, about caring for someone else as much as you cared for yourself. The night deepened, and the forest grew quieter. Only the distant hoot of an owl punctuated the silence. Alara rested against the cabin wall, her hand lightly brushing her belly, and Rylan kept watch outside. The stars twinkled above, and the world seemed vast, full of secrets waiting to be discovered. He knew one thing for certain. Alara was not just a traveler, not just a girl sent by her brother. She was a mystery, a puzzle, and perhaps a gift from the universe. And whatever lay ahead, storms, dangers, or discoveries, they would face it together. For the first time in years, Rylan allowed himself to hope. The forest was no longer just a place to survive. It was a place where new beginnings could grow, where knowledge and courage could thrive, and where humanity's true strength, compassion, ingenuity, and resilience could shine. And deep down, he felt a stirring of anticipation, a sense that the days ahead would bring revelations far greater than he had ever imagined. The forest waited silently, holding its breath, as if it too knew that the story of Rylan and Alara was only beginning. The forest was calm in the early morning, bathed in pale sunlight that filtered through the canopy. Birds sang quietly, and the wind moved gently among the leaves. Rylan had risen early, as always, stacking firewood and checking his traps. But today, his mind felt uneasy. Something in the air seemed off. A subtle shift that he couldn't ignore. Alara emerged from the cabin, carrying a small basket filled with berries. She moved carefully, mindful of her condition, yet there was a quiet determination in her steps. She had been learning quickly, and Rylan had begun to rely on her more than he had expected. Together, they made a strong team, blending skill, knowledge, and instinct to survive in this isolated place. Rylan, she called softly, do you hear that? He paused, straining his ears. At first, there was only the usual forest sounds. Rustling leaves, distant bird calls, the soft rush of a stream. Then he noticed a faint crackling noise, unnatural in its rhythm, coming from beyond the trees. Someone's here, he said, his voice low but steady. Stay close. Alara's eyes widened, but she nodded. She didn't panic. Instead, she moved to his side, ready to follow his lead. Rylan grabbed his axe, keeping one hand free to push aside branches as he advanced cautiously toward the sound. Through the trees, he saw them, two figures moving slowly and deliberately, scanning the area. They wore uniforms he recognized from the colony authorities, the same people who had sent scouts to monitor forest activity. Ryland's jaw tightened. They were looking for Alara. "Why would they come here?" she whispered, clutching her bundle. "They know about you," Ryland said. "And they want you back. We can't let that happen." He turned to her, voice firm. "Follow my instructions exactly. Do not speak unless I tell you to. Do not move unless I say. Can you do that?" Alara nodded. "I can do that." Ryland led her deeper into the forest, moving quietly and using the natural cover to their advantage. He knew this terrain better than anyone, and he had spent years learning how to disappear among the trees. The authority scouts, while equipped with technology, lacked his familiarity with the forest. That would give them an edge, but only if they were careful. They reached a small clearing surrounded by thick undergrowth. Ryland motioned for Alara to hide behind a cluster of bushes while he observed. The scouts moved cautiously, scanning the area, their devices occasionally beeping as they tried to detect signs of life. Ryland studied their movements. They were methodical, well-trained, but too reliant on machines. Nature was unpredictable, and he could use that. Slowly, he began to create diversions, snapping twigs, rustling leaves in a distant area, shifting shadows to make it appear as if someone was there. The scouts paused, puzzled, then moved toward the noise. Alara watched in awe as he worked. You know exactly what to do," she whispered. "I've lived here long enough to know how to survive," Ryland said quietly. "But survival is more than strength. It's patience, observation, timing. You'll learn." They spent hours in the forest, moving silently, avoiding the scouts. Ryland taught Alara to blend into the shadows, to move without leaving a trace, to anticipate where the enemy would look next. She was a quick learner, and he could see her confidence growing with each successful maneuver. By midday, the scouts were frustrated, their movements growing more erratic. Ryland saw an opportunity. "We need to lead them somewhere they can't follow," he said. "Follow me." He led her to a small ravine, its edges steep and covered with dense underbrush. A narrow path ran along the top, but the sides dropped sharply into the shadows below. It was perfect, a natural barrier that would slow the scouts and give them time to escape. Ryland paused at the edge, scanning the terrain. "Here," he said. "This is where we split up. You stay on the right side, hidden under the bushes. I'll take the left and draw them away. When I give the signal, run back to the cabin and hide. Understood?" Alara nodded, her hands trembling slightly but her eyes resolute. "Understood." Ryland moved first, stepping lightly along the path, deliberately making noise on the left side. The scouts noticed immediately and began to follow, unaware that they were being led into a trap. Branches snapped, leaves rustled, and the forest seemed to come alive around them. Ryland had positioned small logs and rocks to create natural obstacles, forcing the scouts to slow down, stumble, and become increasingly frustrated. Meanwhile, Alara remained hidden, watching intently. She marveled at his ability to use the forest as both shield and weapon. It was not brute force. It was intelligence, foresight, and patience. Ryland was teaching her that survival was as much about the mind as the body. After nearly an hour, Ryland signaled by whistling softly a pattern only Alara would recognize. She moved quickly, but quietly, slipping through the undergrowth and returning to the cabin. She arrived just as Ryland appeared moments later, covered in leaves and dust, but unharmed. "Good," he said, catching his breath. "They won't give up easily, but we've bought ourselves time." Alara's eyes were wide with admiration. You were amazing out there. How did you know what to do?" Ryland smiled faintly. "I've had a lot of practice. But the forest helps too. It has a way of guiding you if you pay attention." Over the next few days, Ryland and Alara worked tirelessly to prepare. They fortified the cabin, setting traps and creating hidden escape routes. They gathered supplies, ensuring they could last if the scouts returned in greater numbers. Every log, every rope, every bush became part of their plan. Despite the danger, Rylan noticed a change in Alara. She was no longer frightened. She was focused, alert, and capable. She learned quickly how to set basic traps, how to read the forest, and how to anticipate potential threats. Rylan realized that her survival instincts were as sharp as her intelligence, a combination that made her uniquely resilient. One night, as they sat by the fire, Alara spoke quietly. "Rylan, why are they after me?" "Is it because of the child?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, they see the child as important, something special. But that doesn't matter to us. What matters is that we survive, that we stay together, and that we protect each other. Do you understand?" She nodded, her hand resting on her belly. "I understand, and I trust you." Rylan felt a warmth in his chest at her words. Trust was rare in his world, especially for someone who had been betrayed by family. To earn it was an honor, and he vowed silently that he would never betray her trust. The next morning, a heavy fog rolled into the forest, thick and chilling. Visibility dropped to mere meters, making travel and scouting difficult. But Rylan saw an opportunity. The fog would mask their movements and give them an advantage over the approaching scouts. He and Alara moved silently through the forest, using the fog as cover. Every step was calculated, every sound deliberate. They avoided open areas, sticking to the undergrowth and natural shadows. It was a tense journey, but their preparation paid off. They reached a high ridge overlooking a small valley, a vantage point that allowed them to see any approaching threat long before it arrived. From this perch, Rylan and Alara watched the scouts cautiously navigate the forest below. They were methodical, but slow and frustrated. Rylan smiled faintly. "They'll give up soon," he said. "They don't know how to fight the forest. They only know technology. We have the advantage." Alara looked at him, admiration in her eyes. "You really are incredible," she said softly. Rylan shook his head. "It's not me. It's humanity. Ingenuity, patience, and courage. That's what keeps us alive." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the trees, they descended from the ridge and returned to the cabin. The forest was calm once more. But both of them knew this was only the beginning. The scouts would return, perhaps with more numbers, perhaps with more technology. But they were ready. Together, they had turned the forest into an ally, a protector, and a weapon. That night, as they sat by the fire, Rylan realized something important. Survival was not just about defending oneself from threats. It was about learning, adapting, and trusting in one another. Alara was no longer a helpless stranger. She was a partner, a teammate, and a symbol of hope in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. And as the stars twinkled above the forest canopy, Rylan understood that their journey was far from over. Challenges awaited, dangers lurked in the shadows, and mysteries of the forest remained undiscovered. But he also knew that together, they could face anything. The forest listened silently, holding its breath, as if acknowledging the courage and ingenuity of the two humans who had made it their ally. And somewhere deep within its ancient roots and trees, life moved with them, watching, waiting, and perhaps even guiding. The forest was quiet in the early morning, the fog lifting slowly to reveal the green canopy bathed in soft sunlight. Rylan and Alara had spent the past few days preparing for any return of the colony scouts. They had fortified the cabin, hidden supplies, and set traps to slow down intruders. Yet, despite all their efforts, a feeling of unease lingered in the air. Alara walked beside Rylan as they explored a part of the forest they had never visited before, moving carefully along a narrow path bordered by thick ferns. Her curiosity had grown stronger with each day spent in the forest, and today she seemed particularly restless. "Rylan," she said softly, "I feel like the forest is leading us somewhere. Do you ever feel that?" Rylan glanced at her, noting the intensity in her eyes. "I do. he admitted. But the forest doesn't speak in words. You have to trust your instincts and follow the signs. They moved deeper into the woods, stepping carefully over roots and rocks, listening to the subtle changes in the wind and the occasional bird call. It was then that Alara stopped suddenly, crouching behind a large tree. "Look," she whispered. Rylan followed her gaze and saw it. A structure partially hidden by overgrown vines and moss. It was made of metal, with smooth curves and intricate patterns etched into its surface. It looked alien, unlike anything Rylan had ever seen. The forest had grown around it, but the shape and design were unmistakably artificial. "What is this?" Rylan asked, awe in his voice. Alara stepped closer, her fingers brushing the surface of the metal. It's not just a building. It's alive, in a way. My program, it trained me to recognize structures like this. They were created by a species that studied humans and our environment long before we even reached this planet. And now, it seems they're waiting for something." Rylan's brow furrowed. "Waiting for what?" Alara took a deep breath. "For the child," she said softly, placing her hand on her belly. "The child I carry. It carries genetic adaptations. It's part human, part designed to survive in extreme environments. This structure, it responds to those like the child. It could help humanity learn to live in harmony with the forest and this planet." Rylan stepped back, processing her words. "So, this is more than just a forest. This is a test? Or a guide?" Alara nodded. "A guide. And possibly a key to something much larger than both of us. But we have to be careful. If the colony authorities find us here first, they'll take the child and use it for their own purposes. We can't let that happen." Rylan's eyes narrowed, determination filling him. "Then we protect it. Together." They approached the structure cautiously. Its surface was smooth and cool, and as Alara touched the etched patterns, a soft light pulsed beneath her fingertips. The patterns glowed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. "See?" Alara whispered. "It's alive. It recognizes life. And it responds." Rylan marveled at the sight. "I've never seen anything like this in my life," he said. "What does it do?" Alara hesitated, then explained. "It can teach us about the forest, about how to survive here, about how humans can coexist with the environment, and it can protect us if we know how to use it." They spent hours exploring the alien structure. Inside, they found chambers filled with devices that hummed softly, panels that displayed alien symbols, and small pools of water that reflected light in unusual ways. Alara moved confidently, her training guiding her actions, while Rylan observed carefully, taking mental notes. "This is incredible," Rylan said, running his fingers over one of the smooth surfaces. "It's like the forest and this structure are connected, working together." Alara nodded. "Exactly. And that connection is why the child is important. The child can communicate with this place in ways we can't. It's part of a plan, one that could help humans survive here for generations." As they explored, Rylan noticed something else. The forest outside seemed calmer, almost protective. Birds perched closer than usual, and small animals peeked from the undergrowth without fear. It was as if the alien structure had awakened a harmony between the forest and themselves. But their moment of discovery was interrupted by distant voices carried on the wind. Rylan's heart sank. He could hear the scouts approaching again, more numerous this time. They had found the faint tracks they had left days before. "Alara," he said urgently, "we have to hide. Now." They moved quickly, but instead of retreating to the cabin, Rylan led Alara deeper into the structure. Its interior chambers were vast and labyrinthine, filled with corridors and hidden alcoves. The soft glow from the walls illuminated their path, and the air felt charged, almost alive. They found a central chamber, a large circular room with a pool of water in the center. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls, and a gentle hum filled the air. Ilara placed her hand over her belly, and the light in the room intensified, responding to her touch. "It's recognizing the child," she whispered. "It knows. It trusts us." Rylan felt a sense of awe wash over him. The forest, the structure, and the child, they were all connected in ways he could not fully understand. And yet, he knew one thing for certain. They had been chosen for a reason. Suddenly, the scouts arrived at the edge of the structure. Their voices were sharp, commanding. "We know someone is in there. Come out now." Rylan glanced at Ilara. "Stay calm. Let me handle this." He stepped out into the open, hands raised, appearing small and unthreatening. "You don't understand," he called. "This place is not just a forest. It's alive. It's connected to the child, and it will not let harm come to us." The scouts hesitated, scanning the alien structure with suspicion. Their devices beeped erratically, unable to make sense of the energy emanating from it. Rylan could see confusion and fear in their eyes. Ilara stayed inside, quietly observing the interaction. She felt the structure's energy, calm and protective, and she knew it would shield them if needed. After tense moments, the scouts backed away, muttering orders to return to the colony. They had underestimated the forest and the structure, and they could not force their way inside without risking failure. Rylan exhaled slowly, relief flooding him. "That was too close," he said, turning back to Ilara. She smiled faintly. "It's okay. The structure protected us. And now, we know we can trust it." They spent the night in the central chamber, resting near the pool of water. Rylan couldn't sleep entirely, his mind racing with questions about the structure and its purpose. But for the first time, he felt a sense of hope. "Ilara," he said quietly, "this place, it's amazing, but it's also dangerous. We have to be careful. The colony won't stop, and there may be more challenges ahead." She nodded, placing her hand on his. "I know, but I also feel like we belong here. Like this forest, this structure, and the child were meant to be together." Rylan felt a warmth in his chest at her words. He realized that survival was no longer just about avoiding danger. It was about understanding, learning, and protecting what mattered most. As the stars twinkled faintly above the forest canopy outside, the structure hummed softly. A gentle, reassuring presence. It was alive, and it had accepted them. Rylan understood then that their journey was far from over. They had discovered a secret that could change everything, a connection between humans, the forest, and the child that was deeper than he could have imagined. But he also knew that the future depended on their courage, ingenuity, and trust in one another. The forest waited silently, the alien structure glowing faintly, as if acknowledging the beginning of something greater. And deep inside, Rylan felt certain that together, they could face whatever challenges awaited: storms, scouts, or mysteries yet unknown. For the first time in years, Rylan felt not just hope, but purpose. The forest had become more than a home. It was a sanctuary, a teacher, and a guide. And with Ilara and the child, he realized that humanity's true strength lay not just in survival, but in connection, courage, and understanding the world in ways that went beyond the obvious. The forest was alive with anticipation that morning, the leaves shimmering in a gentle breeze. Rylan and Ilara had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Knowing the colony authorities would return, they had fortified their cabin, studied the alien structure, and learned to move through the forest with skill and precision. But this day felt different, heavier, charged with the sense that something remarkable was about to happen. Ilara rested near the central chamber of the alien structure, her hands gently cradling her belly. The child inside moved as if sensing the energy of the place. Rylan watched her, a quiet admiration swelling in his chest. He had faced storms, wild animals, and human threats, but this protecting something so precious was unlike anything he had ever done. "They're coming," Ilara whispered. Rylan nodded, stepping outside to the clearing where the forest met the edge of the cabin. He could hear the faint crunch of boots on the forest floor. The scouts had returned, more numerous this time, determined to take the child. Their devices beeped and scanned, but the forest itself seemed to push back, subtle but unmistakable. Branches shifted, shadows fell differently, and the alien structure pulsed faintly in response. Rylan raised his hand to Alara. "Stay inside, trust me." She nodded, her face set with determination. "I trust you." The scouts advanced cautiously, but Rylan was ready. He moved quickly, using his knowledge of the terrain to create diversions. Fallen logs, hidden pits, and controlled noise guided them away from the structure. Each step was precise, each movement calculated. He could see the scouts growing frustrated, confused, unsure of what the forest was hiding from them. Inside the central chamber, Alara concentrated, letting her hands hover over her belly. The child's energy seemed to respond to her focus, and the alien structure began to glow more brightly. Symbols on the walls shifted and pulsed in harmony with the energy, creating a soft, protective barrier around the chamber. Rylan returned briefly to check on her. "It's working," he said, awe in his voice. "The structure. It's protecting us." Alara smiled faintly. "It's not just protecting, it's communicating. The forest and the structure. They understand what we're trying to do. They want us to succeed." Hours passed as the scouts tried to find a way inside. Their technology failed against the natural and alien defenses, and Rylan realized that brute force would not win this battle. He needed cunning, creativity, and timing, the very qualities that had always kept him alive in the forest. He led the scouts further away, creating a trail that seemed obvious but was actually misleading. Each step he took was mirrored by subtle signals to Alara, who guided the child's energy in the structure. The forest responded, closing off certain paths with fallen branches and dense undergrowth, while the alien structure's light pulsed in harmony with the child's movements. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the scouts paused, exhausted and frustrated. Their devices malfunctioned, their maps useless in the ever-changing forest. Rylan knew it was the perfect moment. He signaled to Alara. "Now," she whispered, and the energy from the child surged, bright and warm. The structure responded instantly, creating a soft dome of light that extended beyond its walls, enveloping the clearing. The scouts froze, unable to advance, their technology rendered ineffective by the combination of human ingenuity, the forest, and the alien energy. Rylan took a deep breath. "It's over," he said, almost in disbelief. For now, inside the chamber, Alara felt a rush of relief and hope. She had sensed the child's connection to the forest, to the structure, but seeing it work in harmony with Rylan's strategy was more than she had imagined. The child had not only survived but had actively contributed to their protection. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the forest, Rylan and Alara emerged from the chamber together. The scouts had retreated, defeated by forces they could not understand. The forest seemed to breathe with them, calm and protective, as if acknowledging the bond that had formed between humans, nature, and the alien structure. Alara rested against Rylan, her hand on her belly. "We did it," she whispered. Rylan nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "We did. And this is just the beginning." Over the next weeks, they began to explore the structure more fully, learning its secrets and capabilities. They discovered it could analyze the forest, track changes in the ecosystem, and even suggest methods to cultivate plants that would thrive in harmony with the environment. The alien design was unlike anything humans had created, yet it was intuitive, almost guiding them toward understanding and coexistence. Alara taught Rylan how to read the symbols, and how to work with the structure's energy. Together, they experimented with small changes, introducing new seeds, monitoring growth patterns, and testing the child's influence. The forest responded positively, as if approving of their efforts. Animals returned to the area, plants grew stronger, and the air felt vibrant with life. One morning, as they worked near a small stream, Rylan looked at Alara and said, "I never thought I'd see a place like this, let alone be part of something so important. The forest, the structure, and now the child. It's more than survival, it's hope." Alara smiled, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. It's humanity at its best, she said. Ingenuity, courage, and compassion. That's what keeps us alive, and that's what allows us to thrive. As the days passed, Ilara's time came. Rylan stayed close, supporting her every step. The birth was peaceful, guided by the alien structure's energy and the calm of the forest. The child arrived healthy, with bright, alert eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. Rylan felt a wave of awe and pride. He had never experienced anything like it. Ilara held the baby, her face radiant. This child, it's more than our family. It's a bridge between humans, the forest, and the future of this planet. Rylan placed a hand on her shoulder. And we'll protect it. Together. In the weeks that followed, Rylan, Ilara, and the child explored the forest further. They discovered new species of plants, ways to grow crops in harmony with the ecosystem, and subtle interactions between the alien structure and the environment. The forest became a living classroom, teaching them lessons about resilience, adaptation, and the power of collaboration. They also knew the colony authorities might return someday, but now they were ready. They had not only the forest and the alien structure on their side, but their own ingenuity, courage, and deep bond. Humanity, in its purest form, had proven itself capable of surviving and thriving in a world that demanded respect, intelligence, and compassion. One evening, as the sun set over the forest, casting long shadows across the trees, Rylan sat by the central chamber, holding the child in his arms. Ilara sat beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. They watched as the forest shimmered in the fading light, the alien structure glowing softly, and the wind whispered through the leaves like a gentle song. "This is our home now," Rylan said softly. "Not just the cabin, not just the forest, but all of it. Together, we can protect it, learn from it, and grow with it." Ilara nodded, smiling. "And one day, this child will understand it too. They will carry humanity's hope into the future, guided by the forest, the structure, and the lessons we've learned." Rylan looked down at the child, feeling a sense of pride and wonder, unlike anything he had ever known. The forest around them was alive, vibrant, and protective. The alien structure hummed gently, acknowledging their presence and efforts. And in that moment, Rylan realized that humanity's true strength lay not in power or technology alone, but in courage, ingenuity, compassion, and the ability to form connections that transcended species, environments, and challenges. As night fell, stars glittering above the forest canopy, Rylan, Ilara, and the child rested together. The forest seemed to embrace them, the alien structure's light pulsing softly in harmony with their breathing. They were a family, a team, and the beginning of something much larger than themselves. Humanity had survived. Humanity had adapted. Humanity had thrived. And in this forest, on this distant planet, the legacy of human courage, ingenuity, and compassion would continue strong, resilient, and full of hope. The forest waited silently, the alien structure glowing softly, and the wind whispered through the trees. A new chapter had begun, and Rylan knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready. Together, they were unstoppable.